Hi, I'm Matt here in Michigan.
And I'm Randall here in Texas. This week we had meant to bring you The Quiet Place Part 2, but obviously, since theaters have closed, we couldn't do that. We decided that we would go back and take a look at A Quiet Place, a film that neither Matt or I watched previously when it was the big in thing to watch. It stars Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, and the plot is that monsters have super sensitive hearing and they can hear you from an unspecified distance away if you make even the slightest noise. That's why they call it The Quiet Place. Matt, having not seen it when it was a big deal, what do you think of the film?
I liked this movie quite a bit. Quite a bit. I liked this movie. When it came out, Netflix had also, in about the same time period, released Bird Box, and because that was on Netflix and stuff, I wouldn't have to pay to go see it in the theaters. I watched that one, and watching that, I was kind of like, I'm hearing a lot of things about A Quiet Place. I bet you A Quiet Place is a better movie, and it certainly is. The only reason I kind of put those two movies kind of like together, other than them coming out at the same time, is they both kind of to add heightened sense, to the movie. They take away kind of like one of your senses. In Bird Box, it's like you can't see everything. You're like blind and stuff. Whereas in A Quiet Place, they increase the monster, or whatever you want to call it, its hearing, so you can't make a noise. So it's basically like not only are you like hiding, so in like a zombie apocalypse, you're kind of like hiding. You're only like going out for supplies and stuff, and you're just watching for like the zombies that you don't run into them. But this one, it's like not only are you hiding, but you get one of your senses kind of like taken away. Where in Bird Box, it was sight, and in this one, it's you can't make any noise.
Yeah, so this could be one of those films where we disagree quite a bit on some things. So I enjoy the acting in it. I enjoy the environment that they're put in. But I have a lot of trouble with this and Bird Box, and there's another Netflix movie like The Silence or something with Stanley Tucci. Don't remember its name right now. But these monster movies where these monsters have these super heightened senses or whatever the heck they are in Bird Box, no one even knows. Um,
Yeah, what are they seeing? I don't think
who
they ever.
knows?
Yeah, who knows?
They don't tell you, and it's not important unless you care about that sort of thing. Like I love the family dynamic in this, and I love the tension in A Quiet Place between the father and the daughter. She thinks that he blames her for their son's death, and he really doesn't. He's like, it's not anyone's fault. Like I liked that component, but I hate these kinds of monsters because I'm like, all right, this monster is a it's big. It's not small. We're not talking about little things, you know. They're big. They're strong. They're fast. They can hear you from anywhere. But I'm like, you know what? Military organizations around the world can handle this kind of monster. You'd have to be inundated with them. You would have to have so many of them to be a threat. It'd have to be an insurmountable amount of them because there's something you can definitely target with guns and are effective. Guns are effective against them. A normal shotgun blasts one of the monster's heads off at the end. So for me, there's a leap. And it only works again in this movie. It only works for me because they happen to be somewhere where there's lots of fields and forests and stuff like that. You put these monsters in, the Sahara, Egypt, the Middle East, someplace. Where do they hide? Where they can't just be shot with a sniper rifle.
Yeah, and this movie takes place, an hour or an hour, not an hour, a year and what a half after the outbreak. Because I think when they lose their son, that was what day 89 or something like that, and now they're in day like 400 and something. Yeah, so really, like you're talking about, like the scene of this movie only focuses on their house and the town or whatever that's nearby that they go to for supplies. So you really don't know too much about what's going on in the rest of the world, other than the newspaper clippings that you see, like the local newspaper clippings that he has down in the basement. And also, you see that he's trying to reach out to different places and not. So I guess you'd assume everybody is cut off. But yeah, I totally agree. One thing people gotta realize about this movie is because everyone has to be quiet, there's very little dialogue. Very little dialogue in this movie. So everything that you're trying to explain, like what's happened, kind of things, because one thing this movie does different that a lot of other movies that are like this, kind of do that this movie doesn't do. They kind of like show you like the event, like when the monsters or aliens or whatever they are like take over. So they take like natural, normal life and then the event that changes normal life. This doesn't do it. This takes you, 89 days into it. It's already happened. So the only thing that you know about what happened, like these creatures coming around when they emerged, is from, newspaper clippings and stuff that they just have in different places. So yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing too. After it goes like, hey, they're armored. That's why people haven't been like killing them lately. But to have that at the end, to have Emily Blunt just shoot one right in the face with a shotgun, I'm kind of like, yeah, like the military, not just the U.S. military, but all the militaries around the world wouldn't figure that out.
All right, so even if you take out the military aspect of it and you just say just normal people, people have been pretty good about figuring things out for a long time now. And you're like, okay, you have a monster, it's super sensitive to hearing. Well, that's a pretty interesting, like, it's a strength, but it's also a pretty interesting weakness. You're like, okay, so
Well, that's the thing too. That was common knowledge. It wasn't just like the main characters or in this film figured that out. Like they kind of
it
you
is.
know
It's known. Yeah.
enhanced that weakness where, but it was common knowledge.
And the
Everyone
thing
knew
is,
that.
like,
It's like, hey, they're going by sound.
a military for sure, but even normal civilians are gonna be able to figure out, okay, well, if I make noise over here, then I can avoid them over here. I can attract them here because of noise, and then I can kill them. Like, let's set up something that just makes like a toy attracts it. Just a normal toy. All right, go set up a little robot toy out in the middle of nowhere, and when they grab it, C4 goes off. It's like, oh, there's two of them, there's three of them. Like, I get from an acting perspective, like that this is super well acted, like you had mentioned. They have to do so much of it without talking, so it's all facial expressions, emotions, and obviously lots of ASL in there, American Sign Language. But I look at it and I'm like, oh my god, I don't see what the big deal is about this movie. I don't see why it's got like a 90% rating uh, from people who have viewed it, because I look at it and I'm like, there's so many plot holes. There's so many, like, these monsters aren't smart, you know?
That's the thing too. I think I'm probably in those people. I rate this movie high probably because I didn't focus as much on the monster, because the monster is real generic. I mean, you can see that I have like a Demogorgon over my shoulder. I mean, it looks almost exactly like a Demogorgon. So I wouldn't say this is, a unique monster at all. But I think it is because the acting is so well done in this, and they have such good chemistry. And part of it is because our two main actors are married in real life, so they don't have to act about being in a long, marriage kind of thing. It's one of those things where they still love each other, but because of the events, there has been some like strains and stuff, but they still like keep people together. They don't have to act that out. They actually live that. So that comes natural and stuff. And the kids, like I said, for this not being a speaking one, like that means you have to show a whole lot, like through like your emotions, your facial features, your reactions to everything. And I think even the kids do a really good job of that in this movie.
Yeah, so the main child actress, she's actually does do have cochlear implants in real life. So like for her, this was probably pretty normal. A lot like the main actor and actress, Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, they're married, so it's probably pretty normal for them to act that, and that helps a lot. But there's you mentioned like their family, and early on they lose their youngest child, um, and then the movie jumps forward and they're pregnant. And I'm like, who would do that in this world? I'm not saying that you don't, life doesn't go on and that you don't try and find a way to have some normalcy, but like, who sits there and says, oh yeah, there's a menace of a monster out there that can hear the slightest whisper and we're gonna have a baby because babies are quiet.
No, well, yeah, exactly. That becomes a big part of like the end of the movie too. Is just how to keep the baby from making sounds and stuff. That's a big part at the end.
Yeah, and I mean they come up with some interesting things, but I'm like, okay, they're just now thinking about soundproofing, so they put together this whole like underground chamber where and they put up soundproofing, and I'm like, what for the baby? This seems like this would have been a good thing anyways. Like why weren't you why weren't you already doing this?
Well, one thing it goes back and forth. Like maybe did it take them a year to make soundproofing kind of like this or whatever? But like you said, you'd think you'd see more like makeshift soundproofing, and then like the whole like trail into town. So I guess it only took them like 3 months to make like sand trails so they don't make noise or whatever with their feet. I don't know. The one thing I would say maybe about the child is maybe that is how they were trying to cope with losing their youngest son. I'm not sure. I will go on that. I think this movie does a good job of showing how that one event affects everyone in the family. You'd already mentioned the strained relationship between the dad and the daughter. The daughter, she blames herself for her youngest brother dying. And the father, they don't really explain too much. My guess is that every time he kind of like sees her or, having her on different things probably reminds him of that event. There's a big scene where he has all of his son's stuff in a small can and he like burns that kind of like his way of kind of like moving on it. He needs to focus on what's coming up next for his life. The son too, like that event, he's afraid to leave home even if he's with his dad and stuff. He doesn't want to go out because he's afraid that he's gonna get captured and killed like his younger brother and stuff was too.
Yeah, yeah. His the the middle son, who's the middle son again, after the baby's born, he he's understandably afraid, but I would think from some perspective, you've grown up in this world that you would get used to it more than he had. But I mean, from a psychological human perspective, it makes sense that he was deathly afraid of leaving the house because whenever they leave the house, there is the chance that no one that someone doesn't come back basically, and he's seen it. He's seen it firsthand. Although I compare it to like zombie apocalypse. If you had grown up in a zombie apocalypse, you would be used to zombies, and you would be a very quiet person probably.
Well, I think another thing too is these people weren't born in this world though too. They've been in it for like a year. So I guess it really depends on how quick you adapt. Obviously, part of the problem with the youngest son dying, I guess, is that he didn't really adapt. He like knew that he wasn't supposed to make noise, but it's almost kind of like because mommy and daddy tell me not to, as opposed to like, hey, if I make noise, I'm gonna die kind of thing. I mean, he was a pretty young kid, so he didn't really have that fear. But yeah, yeah, I wonder too. I wonder. I mean, I don't know psychology like how well you would adapt, to a situation or whatever like this. Like, how quickly would it take you to change the way you think and what you do every day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, age is definitely an important thing. Like it's gonna be easier for adults to adapt. Not I wouldn't say easier. Easier is probably the wrong word. They have the capacity for like understanding the situation and why. It's the why that a young kid who's 4 or 5 just might not understand. It's like, well, why do I have to be quiet? Well, because if you're not, it's like telling your kid in the savannah basically, if you're not quiet, a tiger might find you. Okay, well, but why am I afraid of a tiger? Because it's not part of my everyday life. So, like I said, I greatly appreciated the acting. I greatly appreciated the environment that they made and the way that it's filmed. But I just don't see what the big deal is. For me, it's the logic leaps, the plot holes. They just bug me to no end with these kinds of movies. No end.
I will say it was better than Bird Box though. So if you're one person who hasn't seen either and are wavering, I would see this over Bird Box. Yeah, you do have to suspend your disbelief and different things like this to see this movie. I mean, I think you really would have to just focus on the acting and the interaction between in between the characters. And like I said, there's only, I don't know, a handful of actors actually in this movie. It is pretty isolated to this family and maybe a couple outsiders.
Yeah, there's just not that much going on there. All right, so if you like this, we're definitely going to have some more flashback movie reviews coming up due to the state of the movie theaters being closed right now. We are going to do X-Men because we were going to do New Mutants. So watch out for our X-Men review coming out. Make sure to give us a like and a subscribe. For now, I'm Randall in Texas. See y'all later.
I'm Matt in Michigan. Have a good day, everyone.